Okay, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought my last speech would be a different one. I thought it would be one of my normal political speeches, but it turns out that it's not. It's a speech that I give where I finally get to tell you who I really am. And I hope that this explains why this motion means so much to me. I spent most of my childhood in foster care. I was taken into emergency care when I was 18 months old and adopted just before I turned 18. Saying those words out loud 44 years on is still really hard, and there are lots of complex reasons for that. But one of the things that I've had to deal with for my whole life is other people's perceptions of me. The most common things that I hear when I tell anybody about myself are, oh, I would never have known. You don't look like somebody that grew up in care. You don't sound like somebody who grew up in care. My personal favourite, you seem really intelligent. You cannot have grown up in care. I became aware that I was different when I was just 6. My social worker asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I told her I wanted to be the Prime Minister or an archaeologist. And kindly, she told me, children like you don't do jobs like that. It was something that I heard throughout my childhood from adults, that I would fail. The expectations for me were very low. Once at school, some marbles went missing from a coat pocket. I probably don't need to tell you whose bag they searched first. We used to get changed in the classroom for PE, and for what are probably very obvious reasons, I did not want to undress in public. When I cried, I was told that I was being difficult. I didn't have any friends. Funnily enough, kids don't want to play with a foster kid, and I would hear things like, "You've got no mum and dad, you weirdo." I was never once invited to a birthday party, and I never had a birthday party myself because I had no one to invite. It was extraordinarily lonely. The first time that I took a piece of cut glass to my wrist, I was 9 years old. The thought of this being my life forever, the loneliness, the relentless bullying, and a sense of absolute hopelessness was too much. And it was something that I had to battle silently throughout my whole childhood. Now, I was lucky. I got to go to university, but of course it went wrong. My relationship at home broke down, and I ended up presenting myself as homeless when I was 19. And I was put into completely unsuitable and unsafe accommodation. But I'm here today as a grown woman with a professional career, a home, a family, the things I thought people like me couldn't have. But I've spent most of my life lying about who I am. You know, you meet people, they ask things like, what do your parents do? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to university? I smile, I nod, I try and change the subject, but it is exhausting. I avoid healthcare services or anywhere else that I might feel exposed. I spent my whole pregnancy terrified that somebody would find out about my background, assume I would be a bad parent and take my baby away. Now, you'd think that those perceptions and stereotypes might have changed throughout my life, but they really haven't. Recently, I heard a group of individuals talking about some looked after children that might be coming to live near them. Oh, we don't want kids like that here. They'll be into drink and drugs. They'll smash our car windows. They'll put a brick through the house windows. We don't want those kinds of kids near our kids. I will leave you to imagine how it feels to have to hear those things being said, but they're not unusual. A recent report by the Independent Children's Home Association shows that children in care homes are treated like criminals rather than victims. Some of the most recent objections to care home comments include things like, the children's challenging behaviour will disrupt the current residential nature of our road and will pose significant risk to neighbours. The plan would harm residents' peace, tranquility and health. One application for a children's home in Derby was withdrawn after over 100 objections were lodged. But what hope do we have, quite frankly, when society views us in this way? Why don't we deserve to have peace, tranquility and good health? Why don't we matter? I didn't ask for my life. I carry the physical scars. I see them every day. I have to deal with the emotional trauma for the rest of my life. People who are care experienced deserve better. We're underrepresented in every profession. We are rarely ever asked for our feedback or input into policies that affect us. It's okay for people to use offensive language to describe us and to discriminate against us. When I got elected 4 years ago, it probably meant more to me than most other people, because I promised my 6-year-old self that one day I would be brave enough to tell my story, that I would talk about why people like me matter. So I'm asking you to support this today. I want you to help me call out and challenge the misconceptions that people have about people like me. It's not easy, and it's not something that's going to happen overnight. But I think if we agree to listen, to learn and to understand, I have real hope that will make things better for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So proud, I have to say, to be following my colleague, my friend, Councillor Palmer, to second this motion, and I've no doubt that we're all incredibly proud of her too. The Show Us You Care Too campaign, led by the Together Trust, are lobbying for care experienced people to become the 10th protected characteristic under the Equality Act. It is only by centring the experiences of those who have lived this in our conversations and in our decision making that we can really begin to understand why this matters so much. That is why I'm grateful to people like Tammy, as well as others who have continued to share their stories and push for change. But it's not just the stories that they share. It's also there are also some really difficult statistics that we need to contend with as well that underpin why this matters. Government statistics show that care leavers are 3 times more likely to not be in education, employment or training than other young people. In 2017, 40% of care leavers aged 19 to 21 were not in education, employment or training either, compared to 13% of that age group in the general population. 25% of homeless people have been at care at some point, and premature death is even considered to be much more likely among people who grew up in care as children. We must not be led to believe that because of these statistics that children in care are somehow by default bad people, or that they can never succeed, because we know that's not true. The way we need to view this is by understanding that our society has failed to make the adequate adjustments to support them. And failing to understand that, they face significant barriers that many of us simply do not. They face discrimination across society, in the housing market and even in employment, and much more. Only through proper recognition of the systemic discrimination and the barriers they face can we start to have a proper conversation about how we can do better in supporting care leavers. This will be an important first step. Whilst the government's eyes are on children's social care due to the McAllister review, which is underway at the moment, we can highlight the need for change and for the rights of care experienced people. I also think today we can send a message of unity and a message that we take our responsibility seriously. Please support our motion and show them you care too.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. There's no amendment, but I've had an indication that 2 people wish to speak. So are there any others who wish to contribute to this? Yeah, I've got you, Councillor. Okay, Councillor Chandwani.
Maybe that's not a good idea. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a care leaver on this side of the chamber, I felt it was necessary for me to speak. I was raised by my dad after a messy divorce, and when he passed away, I was taken into care at 14. My first placement, I was in Tottenham. My first placement was in Croydon. I was at Hornsey School for Girls sitting my GCSEs. Some social worker thought placing me in Croydon was best in my best interest. It wasn't. This was systematically setting me up. My second placement was in Hounslow. I can tell you that that is also nowhere near Hornsey. I ran away a lot. I bumped the trains to get to school. I was taken off roll. My head teacher had to pay for my lunch and give me travel money because he didn't want me to get in trouble. I set exams that I wasn't enrolled in. And on GCSE day, I can't explain how hard it was that everybody got an envelope with their name on it, but because I wasn't on roll, I did not. I lost my college place. I finally returned to live with relatives in Southgate, but that broke down. And I ended up homeless. Heathrow Airport and now Oliver Tambo Park, which is now called, but then it was called Albert Rec, were my homes. It was Bernie Grant who got me my first leaving care set of rights. Nobody explained that to me. And it was Councillor Diakides who helped me with my first flat that I currently live in. Haringey paid my rent while I went to university. They paid for basic furniture. I didn't even have light bulbs, let alone a bed or a sofa. And here I am today, making sure that I give you as much of a headache as I possibly can in the time that I'm in this chamber. But I know my life could have been different, and many care leavers don't have good head teachers, don't have good youth workers, and don't have a good MP. I was lucky. Young people shouldn't be lucky. Young people should be protected and supported. Young people should make sure that every single service that is there to raise them does so in their best interest. I do believe in this motion. I believe that young people who are care leavers are an oppressed group. And I hope that everybody on both sides of this chamber stroke sports hall does support this motion. I do want to thank Councillor Palmer. I think it was very brave of her to speak today, and I've still got goosebumps, but also resonated with a lot of what she said. And as a 43-year-old, I still flinch every time I hear people talk about care leavers. And it's not because I feel ashamed, it's because I feel like I haven't done enough to change the system. And I know on many occasions outside the old Civic Centre, pre-COVID, before the online meetings, me and her used to sit down and have wild plans of how we were going to show social workers that actually we're care leavers, and this is what you can make sure that the young people you work with could become. But sadly, we now come to the end of this political term, and we didn't get the opportunity to do that. And sadly, Councillor Palmer is not returning, and it's up to the electorate whether I will return. But I hope that she does keep in touch with Haringey, and that we still do that piece of work we promised each other at the back of the Civic Centre 2 years ago.
Councillor Poku.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to speak on this motion, but I felt compelled to do that due to comments and speeches from colleagues. So thank you, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Ross, and Councillor Chamwani for sharing your stories. As a corporate parent and also a member of the Corporate Parents Committee, I welcome this motion, and I'm in agreement that the council needs to work more closely with looked after children to support them and their families, ensuring what happened to Councillor Ross's mother and sibling does not happen to other vulnerable children. Councillor Weston isn't here this evening, but when she was a cabinet member and I served on the corporate parenting committee with her, we actually highlighted what Cllr collaboration meant and how listening to young people works. We had several examples. One example was just a young man who was in care, and he had always heard about how somebody in care could get just gym membership. And he kept on going on and on about it. And we actually listened to him, worked with Fusion, and managed to get gym memberships for, and I think it's now in place for all people that are looked after, which is great. We also had a story of another care leaver, and the council has a duty to actually house the care leavers when they reach age 18 or above. And we actually found out from the stories that were shared with us that when they do have a property that is available to view, they actually group the care leavers with other residents as well. And it's quite daunting just for anybody, but somebody who is such a young age is even more daunting from them. So listening to her story, we worked with Homes for Haringey, and we actually have a system in place where the care leaver actually has first view on their own, not with other residents that are looking for homes, but they actually get a chance to actually look at the property, given a day or at least some time beforehand to actually decide whether they want to move that property or not. So we did work with them as well, and again, listen to the needs of the young people that are being looked after. There's a charter in place as well. Again, that's actually something that's been written collaboratively by the young people as well, and we need to continue working closely with them. So I actually look forward to more of these examples and the council working more closely with children under care and support them in the best way that we can. So I hope we can all support this motion.
Okay, the leader wants to speak and then we'll move to vote.
Thank you. I'm going to keep this brief and just really wanted to say a big thank you to Councillor Palmer and Councillor Chanwani. It's not easy to share such personal stories in front of all of us, despite how well we know you. So thank you very much. And actually, just to see the two amazing women you are is just so hopeful, and I know will give inspiration to so many young people. I'm not going to say any more than that because I think you've said it all. I think we can all get behind this motion tonight. And Mr. Mayor, if I can suggest a recorded vote, one where we all rise and make sure that our vote is recorded, I'd like to suggest that, and I hope everyone's in agreement.
So we need at least 8 colleagues to rise to support the leader's call. Yeah, supporting children in care, which should be unanimous, I think. Okay, yep, that's more than 8. Thank you very much. We'll now move to, excuse me, Councillor Palmer, you have a minute to respond if you like.
Thank you. I'm going to be super quick, so I want to ensure that we hear the final motion. Thank you is all I have to say, really. I wish I could go back in time and tell my 6-year-old self that I would do it. I'm not quite sure she would believe me, but I did. And yeah, if that's all I've achieved in my 4 years, that's what I really wanted to do. So please take this forward. Please don't think that being a corporate parent isn't important. Please don't think that it ends this evening. It's just the start of this fight. And I would really love this council to be one of the first, I think we are actually, to do this as a motion. I'd really like us to encourage others in their next administrations to champion this and make sure that care experience people really do become the next protected characteristic. Seema, thank you for sharing. I've really missed our chats actually. I promise you I won't be going anywhere. I promise you we'll get that piece of work done. But thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. All right, let's now move to a vote. A recorded vote was requested. More than 8 members voted in support. So we will now go to Aisha to call us all individually.
Councillor Ajay.
4.
And can I just ask colleagues to rise when they vote, please, so we can see and hear them. Thank you.
4.
Councillor Ahmet.
4.
Councillor Barnes.
4.
Councillor Berryman.
4.
Councillor Bevan.
4.
Councillor Barbara Blake.
4.
Councillor Bull.
4.
Councillor Carlin.
4.
Councillor Cawley Harrison.
Unequivocally so. 4.
Councillor Chamwani. 4. Councillor Shano. 4. Councillor Connor.
4.
Councillor Carverwell.
Overwhelmingly 4.
Councillor Dennison.
4.
Councillor D. Keedies.
4.
Councillor Dixon.
4.
Councillor Doan.
4.
Councillor Ejiofor.
4.
Councillor Emery.
4.
Councillor Gordon.
4.
Councillor Guinness.
4.
Councillor Hakata.
4.
Councillor Hare.
4.
Councillor Hinchcliffe.
4.
Councillor Ibrahim.
4.
Councillor Mitchell.
4.
Councillor Morris.
4.
Councillor Opoku.
4.
Councillor Palmer.
4.
Councillor Rice.
4.
Councillor Ross.
4.
Councillor Say.
4.
Councillor Stennett,
4.
Councillor Tucker,
4.
Councillor White,
4.
Councillor Williams,
4.
and Councillor Jogi.
4. Liz, just turn your mic off for us. Thanks.
So that's 37 for the motion.
Thank you. Pat, just turn your mic off for us, please. Okay, that motion is passed. Well done. As we have a second motion, part of